Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a truly extraordinary historical puzzle, Sir Francis Bacon, often called the father of the scientific method. But was he, a visionary genius misunderstood, or maybe a calculating opportunist? We're about to put him on trial, sort of. And our sources for this are, well, unique. We're looking at this fascinating trial of Bacon, conducted by an AI agent, Claude AI from Anthropic.
Right, using a framework called the authentic method, or TAM.
Exactly. And then we'll hear from a local historian adding some crucial context that really shifts the landscape, completely changes things. So our mission for you, the listener, it's not just about unraveling Bacon's character, which is complex enough. It's also about sharpening your own authentic authority radar, helping you figure out who's genuinely serving your interests versus, well, who might be exploiting them.
Yeah, and this authentic method, TAM, it's a framework for personal authenticity. It actually came out of a 10-year journey inspired partly by Bacon's own ideas. Its core mission is really about helping people flourish by giving them tools, systematic tools, to tell the difference between real personal authority and, the manufactured kind. Especially now, with all the sophisticated deception out there, basically it helps you assess who's genuinely on your side. So Claude AI looked at Bacon across 16 questions, 4 pillars: integrity, words, deeds, humility. For this deep dive, we're focusing on integrity. It's the most contentious, really revealing part. Claude initially gave Bacon, what, a C grade?
C grade, yeah. Mixed authenticity. Okay, picture the scene, though. A grand tribunal, Stone Hall of Westminster, King James I presiding. They even say Queen Elizabeth II's ghost might have been hanging around.
Yuki.
And the jury, 12 everyday Londoners, a bookkeeper, bricklayer, blacksmith, dock worker, barmaid, farmer. You get the idea.
Common humanity judging a lord. Quite the setup.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with that integrity pillar. What did Claude AI find initially? What was the opening salvo against Bacon?
Well, it starts with the foundation, right? Integrity. The first question Claude asked was, do your public statements match your private behavior and personal choices? It's trying to figure out, does this person practice what they preach? Do their actions align with their public values?
And Claude found a troubling pattern of contradiction, right? Can you walk us through some of the big examples Claude brought up, things from his life, his job?
Absolutely. So, for instance, Bacon had this personal notebook, the Commentarius Salutis. Think of it as his private strategy journal. And in it, handwritten notes reminding himself to flatter patrons, study rival weaknesses, that kind of thing.
You're not great.
Not great. And then, more damningly, while he was Lord Chancellor, the highest judge in England, he was systematically taking what really looked like bribes. This directly contradicts his public writings on justice. And there are parliamentary records from 1621 documenting this. And then there's his marriage to Alice Barnum. She was 14, which again seemed to contradict his own published essays on moral restraint and wisdom.
So Claude's verdict on that first charge, 0 points. Just flat out failed. You almost feel for him having to defend that to an AI judge. So how did Bacon respond? What could he possibly say?
Well, his defense was pretty elaborate. He argued those calculating words in his private notes. That was part of running, quote, the most sophisticated intelligence network of his age. Survival, he said, depended on having multiple identities.
An intelligence network.
Yeah, and manipulating courtiers. That was just psychological research for character studies and the dramatic works attributed to another. A little hint there.
The Shakespeare connection. Always lurking.
Always. As for the bribes, he called them strategic extractions. Not for him, oh no. It was to fund the preservation of dangerous truths. Basically financing humanity's intellectual future, as he put it. He also attacked the credibility of his critics, like John Aubrey, saying they were part of the establishment he was threatening. His mission, he claimed, was just beyond the morals of his time. Quoting himself, "A wise man will make more opportunities than he finds."
That's quite a defense. Strategic, maybe even slippery. But you still wonder, even back then, where's the line between strategic extraction and just corruption? What did Claude AI make of that noble lies argument?
Yeah, Claude addressed that directly. It basically said, look, true higher purpose creates its own accountability. Manufactured authority just exempts itself. And Claude pointed out there was no systematic accounting for these supposed truth preservation funds from the bribes.
No receipts, basically.
No receipts. And the connection to dramatic works, unverifiable. So the verdict stood, 0 points. But the jury? They started to look a bit more interested, maybe seeing the complexity.
Okay, let's move to the second charge against his integrity. What was the question there?
The second question was, do your personal incentives align with your stated mission? So, does your money, your career path, actually support what you say you're trying to achieve? Or do you maybe profit from the problems you claim you want to solve?
And Claude AI saw this as even more damaging. Systematic exploitation, it said. What did the AI focus on?
Well, again, the bribes. While publicly talking up justice, he's taking money that creates direct conflicts of interest. The House of Lords proceedings documented it, and his private notes again showed him aiming for advancement through, quote, calculated flattery and manipulation. Okay. So Claude's conclusion, his personal incentives were just systematically misaligned with his stated mission.
And again, same judgment from Claude.
Mm.
0 points. Failed this test too. How did Bacon push back against this charge that he was just in it for himself?
He got pretty impassioned here. He basically asked, who really benefits from painting me as corrupt? Hinting it was the parliamentary system he wanted to reform.
Turning it back on them.
Exactly. He argued, look, I didn't build palaces. I didn't hoard wealth. He claimed he spent his entire fortune developing his scientific methodology, those bribes. Again, strategic extractions from a corrupt system to fund, quote, the most elaborate truth preservation project in human history.
Keeps coming back to that.
He does. He even quoted, all that glistens is not gold, and adamantly stated, my incentives were perfectly aligned with my mission, but my mission was larger than conventional justice could comprehend. He challenged Claude. Name one personal luxury I gained from all this.
That is a powerful defense, sacrificing personal comfort for this grand mission. But again, how do you prove it? How do you prove your mission is truly larger than conventional justice and not just a fancy excuse? It's tricky. Okay, but things started to turn around a bit on the third question, right? A glimmer of hope for Bacon. What was Claude looking at here?
Yeah, the third question. Do you maintain independent moral judgment and principles over crowd conformity? Basically, courage of convictions. Do you stand by your beliefs even when it's unpopular or costly?
And here Claude saw a more mixed picture, right? What did it find for and against Bacon on this point?
Right. On the one hand, yeah, genuine intellectual bravery. He challenged Aristotle's dominance with his Novum Organum, his new scientific method. That was huge. He opposed popular tax policies even when Queen Elizabeth wasn't happy. He developed these new scientific ideas against the entire university establishment. Real conviction there. Claude also noted his political opportunism, shifting his stance a bit between Elizabeth's reign and James I, and, critically, his betrayal of his former patron, the Earl of Essex.
Okay, but despite the opportunism points, Claude actually gave him the point here. Found his response satisfactory. His intellectual convictions seemed real. So how did Bacon react to getting this partial win?
Oh, he was triumphant. Said something like, finally, Claude, this above all, to thine own self be true. Another little hint, maybe. He hammered home how he stood alone for 40 years against Europe's academic elite, building his empirical method despite ridicule, isolation. And he argued that the deepest authenticity sometimes requires tactical inauthenticity, sacrificing his own reputation to save truth for the future. He quoted again, he that will not apply new remedies must expect new evils, for time is the greatest innovator. You could see the jury perk up, relief, growing interest. Maybe this guy wasn't just a corrupt politician.
That idea, again, tactical inauthenticity for deeper authenticity, it really makes you think, doesn't it? About how much we don't know about these historical figures operating in these complex, sometimes dangerous environments.
Okay, now the big one. Arguably the most defining moment, certainly the most controversial, his role in prosecuting the Earl of Essex.
Right. The fourth question hits this head on. Do you criticize your own allies, benefactors, or supported figures when they violate your stated principles? Principles over loyalty. This really gets to the heart of character, doesn't it? Do you put universal principles above personal ties, even when it costs you? And Claude presented this as a complex challenge for Bacon's authenticity. What were the key points for and against him regarding Essex?
Okay, so for Bacon, he did join the prosecution against Essex, his former patron, when Essex committed treason. He chose the law over personal loyalty.
But against him?
While the timing looked opportunistic, citing against Essex certainly didn't hurt his career prospects with the new regime. And there wasn't much evidence of him criticizing other powerful supporters when they maybe stepped out of line.
Right. But again, Claude gave him the point here. Ruled he satisfied the question. Chose principle over loyalty when it truly mattered. So what was Bacon's core defense for turning on his friend and patron? And how did the jury take it?
This is where Bacon apparently got quite emotional, spoke of the agony of that decision. Quoted again, "It is impossible to love and to be wise. I must be cruel only to be kind."
Wow. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. He acknowledged Essex was brilliant, but said his fatal flaw was confusing his personal ambition with what was good for England. Essex's rebellion, Bacon argued, would have thrown England into civil war. It would have destroyed Bacon's whole life's work preserving scholarship, natural philosophy. He said he lost not just a benefactor, but someone he genuinely cared for. And he made powerful enemies by prosecuting Essex, which he argued proved he wasn't just being opportunistic.
Because an opportunist would have tried to play both sides.
Exactly. He claimed he chose England's future over my own comfort, truth preservation over personal loyalty.
Yeah, that's a profound defense.
Yeah.
Losing someone you care about, making enemies, all for a perceived greater good. You can see how that would sway a jury. Their skepticism just melted away.
Completely transformed them, apparently. They saw him not just as calculating, but maybe as someone who genuinely sacrificed for a higher principle. So the final score for Pillar 1, integrity, from Claude's initial assessment, 2 out of 4, matches the original TAM score. But despite that mixed score, the jury just saw 2 straight wins for Bacon. They were seeing real conviction.
Okay, so that's Claude AI's initial take. 2 out of 4 on integrity. Mixed. But now we bring in the counter-argument, the historian's view, the crucial lens of historical context. We spoke with Dr. Robert Davies, a local historian with deep knowledge of the period.
Yes, and Dr. Davies's main point is pretty blunt. He argues Claude's conclusions suffer from chronological arrogance.
Chronological arrogance, meaning
Meaning applying our modern moral standards back onto history without understanding the context of the time.
Okay, that's a strong claim.
Okay.
Let's go back to question 1. Bacon got 0 points from Claude for taking bribes. How does Dr. Davies reframe that?
Well, Dr. Davies explains that in 17th century England, pretty much every judge took gifts from both sides in a case, often.
Every judge. Seriously.
Pretty much standard practice. It wasn't seen as corruption like we see it, Davies argues. It was part of the established judicial system, this whole elaborate patronage network. Judges had low official salaries, so this was how they supplemented their income. It was common, and apparently not seen as corrupt if it didn't actually influence the judgment.
If it didn't influence the judgment, tricky line.
Very. And Davies also points out Sir Edward Coke, the guy who pushed Bacon's impeachment. He was Bacon's bitter political rival, using the charges as a weapon. Davies even quotes Bacon saying something like, "I usually accept bribes from both sides so that tainted money can never influence my decision."
Okay, wow. So if that was the accepted norm, what does this mean for Claude's ruling on question 1?
Well, according to Dr. Davies, Bacon gets full points. His public statements did match his private behavior within the accepted ethical framework of his time. It's a massive insight, isn't it, how much our modern view can distort things if we don't understand their world.
It totally flips the script, yeah. Okay, let's do the same for question 2. Bacon's incentives, his marriage, Claude gave him 0 points again. What's Dr. Davies's take?
Right, Davies tackles the marriage first. Points out that back then, the age of consent was 12 for girls, 14 for boys. Unions at that age, especially for nobility, were common for strategic family alliances.
So Claude was imposing 21st century standards again.
Exactly. And regarding incentives, Davies echoes Bacon's own defense. The man didn't get rich. He spent his fortune developing scientific methodology. Davies puts it starkly. Every oligarch who truly seeks personal gain destroys analytical capability. Bacon created it.
Wow, okay. So what Claude saw as exploitation, Davies frames as strategic sacrifice for science. So what's the score for question 2, according to Davies?
Full points again. Dr. Davies argues Bacon's personal incentives were aligned with his stated mission, shown by his huge financial sacrifices for knowledge.
So Dr. Davies' overall critique is that without understanding the history, even a sophisticated tool like Claude AI can end up being, what did he call it, a tool of historical revisionism, embedding hidden biases. That's a really crucial point for anyone trying to understand the past or even the present sometimes.
It really is. Bacon was operating inside a corrupt system, yes, but Dr. Davies argues he was simultaneously working to build the tools, the scientific method, that would eventually help humanity transcend such systems. Those private notebooks. Not proof of deception, but research into power dynamics. Research he'd later embed in maybe humanity's greatest theatrical education.
Okay, so this completely reframes Bacon's initial score for integrity.
Massively. According to Dr. Davies's reevaluation, Bacon's Pillar 1 integrity score jumps from Claude's 2 out of 4, that mixed authenticity, to a perfect 4 out of 4.
Perfect integrity.
Yeah. It suggests a complete rehabilitation, painting him as someone who maybe sacrificed his own reputation to safeguard systematic truth for the future.
So this whole deep dive into Bacon's trial, It really hammers home how vital historical context is when we're judging authenticity, character. What looks like a clear contradiction or corruption to us now might have been, back then, a complex strategy, maybe even a principled sacrifice, a mission bigger than just personal gain.
Absolutely. And it challenges us, doesn't it, to apply that same critical thinking now. Because understanding Bacon's choices, whether you see them as tactical in authenticity or just operating in his time, it sharpens our own ability to question assumptions today, to try and figure out who's genuinely working for a greater purpose versus who's just, making excuses.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a really compelling question, I think. In our own complicated world today, how do we judge leaders, innovators, anyone who claims a higher purpose but uses unconventional, maybe even morally murky means? What kind of accounting, like Claude AI asks for, do we demand to tell the difference between a genuine higher purpose and just clever rationalization?
It's tough. But knowledge is most valuable when you understand it, apply it. Critical thinking is just essential today, with all the information flying around. Hopefully this deep dive encourages you, the listener, to question assumptions, look beyond the headlines, always consider different perspectives.
What really stands out to you from all this? How does understanding Bacon's historical context change your view of integrity, authenticity, past or present?
We've definitely seen that sometimes deep authenticity might require navigating flawed systems in ways that look, well, inauthentic on the surface, like Bacon operating within that corrupt system to build something better. It raises that question you asked. How should we judge people today who claim they're doing good through means that seem off? What proof do we need?
Lots to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration into Sir Francis Bacon's very complex legacy gave you some surprising facts, maybe a clearer path to being well-informed. Join us next time for another journey into the depths of knowledge.